Here it is, folks, the Multi-Species Farming for Beginners ebook, the 5 principles to manage for landscape, nature and profit. And this ebook is available on the farmingrevolution.com.au website, and it's $9.99 Australian dollars, so very good value.
In the Beginner's Guide to Multi-Species Farming, I share a simple overview of the 5 principles and explain why they are so important. These principles aren't rules or rigid instructions, they're more like a foundation, a way to understand how your farm functions as a living system, and when you start working with them, everything begins to change. Let's walk through them one by one. 1. Increase biodiversity. Biodiversity is always the starting point, because diversity creates more diversity. When you bring multiple plant species into a landscape, everything else begins to rise with it. Microorganisms increase, insects return, birds move through, root systems deepen, soil health strengthens. One shift above ground creates a whole series of changes below ground. Diversity above ground leads to diversity below ground, and that's what stabilises your entire farming system. And this includes livestock. Grazing isn't separate from biodiversity, it's part of the story. How we graze, how often we move animals, how long we rest paddocks, all of that influences the life in the system. Increasing biodiversity is about bringing more life into your landscape so the system itself becomes stronger, more resilient and more productive. 2. Minimise soil disturbance. Soil is a living substrate, a community, not just a medium. Every time we disturb it, we break fungal networks, collapse soil structure and suffocate the biology that keeps everything functioning. This principle isn't about never disturbing the soil. Farming is practical and sometimes disturbance is necessary. The message here is disturb as little as possible, and when you do, follow it immediately with life. Planting a diverse, mixed species blend straight after disturbance gives the soil what it needs to rebuild. Those living roots bring biology back online, reconnect fungal pathways and reactivate the whole underground workforce. 3. Keep the ground covered. Bare ground is the enemy, and I mean that quite literally. Bare soil loses moisture, loses biology, loses structure and eventually loses life. Covering it does the opposite. A covered soil creates its own microclimate. It regulates temperature, it captures dew, it protects the microbes below the surface, and most importantly, it stops precious moisture from evaporating before plants and biology can use it. Everything plays a role in covering the ground. Animals, crops, grasses, even weeds. Keeping the ground covered strengthens the carbon pathway underground, builds the carbon sponge, improves water infiltration and keeps the soil open and aerobic. Simply put, cover crops keep your soil alive. 4. Increase landscape function. This principle is about how your farm behaves, how it handles water, fertility and energy. When landscape function is strong, water doesn't rush off, it slows, it sinks, it stays. Over time, the soil develops such powerful water holding capacity that runoff becomes rare, even after heavy rain. And the secret to this is living roots. A diverse mix of plants creates channels that let water move deep into the soil. Those roots also bring carbon from the leaves above ground, down into the root zone, building humus. And humus is your water tank underground. Runoff is literally your capital leaving the farm. This principle is about keeping your wealth where it belongs, on your farm, feeding your soils, your plants and your livestock. 5. Increase all cycles. There are 7 major cycles on your farm: carbon, water, nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, phosphorus and microbiology. Regeneration happens when these cycles are open and flowing. I often talk about the 3-year phenomenon. What happens when you practice multi-species farming consistently? Around the 3-year mark, the system starts to become self-sufficient. This does depend on your baseline value, but in general, 3 years is the time when changes are seen above the ground. The key to this is soil carbon. The magic number is 8, because it has been observed that when your soil carbon reaches around 8%, the system becomes fully functional, holding water, recycling nutrients, supporting biology, and driving its own recovery. When carbon reaches that threshold, the physical, mineral, and biological parts of the soil system begin working together as one. That's when your landscape becomes resilient, productive, and able to look after itself. So in closing, these principles are the recipe, but the recipe only works when you apply it in your context. Every farm business has its own variables: soil type, rainfall, lay of the landscape, species mixes, equipment, labour, time, age, energy levels, finances, and family capacity. Regeneration isn't about copying what someone else is doing. It's about understanding what you are capable of managing and making decisions that improve your land, your health, your time, and your financial margin. True profit isn't just money, it's the balance of time, well-being, landscape function, and cash flow. When those four are aligned, profit becomes sustainable and your farm becomes resilient.